Back on Morning Line, thanks for joining us. Our guest is Barbara McGinnis, elder care law expert. And you know, it's interesting, during the break, she was telling me one thing, and I don't know if you've done this. Whenever you fill out forms for anything on your documents that you own stuff or you have, funds and investments, you have beneficiaries. You say some people forget to change the beneficiaries. Right.
So if you have an asset that's supposed to pass by beneficiary designation, life insurance policies, IRAs, like Taylor was asking about, 401ks, a lot of those things are just intended to pass by beneficiary designation. Right. Meaning when you die, somebody, whoever you've named, is going, well, ex-spouses get left on these documents. Mm-hmm.
So wait a second.
Really annoys
have you seen that happen?
spouse.
I was going to say that. Have you seen that? That's my question for you.
Yes.
Have you seen that happen where something happens, the new spouse, and then her husband dies, and then, okay, here's the fund. Oh, the beneficiary is still his ex-wife. Yes. So she gets it?
Yes.
Over the current living wife.
Right, because it's by contract, it's going to pass to that beneficiary.
Oh, can you imagine?
The other thing, it's bad enough when it's an ex, but then, it's really sad when people forget to remove deceased spouses and they still have their spouse named that's predeceased them.
I can see how that would happen. Now, when that occurs, then it goes to probate.
Hopefully there's a contingent beneficiary. Okay,
meaning like it would go...
A backup plan.
Wouldn't it just naturally then go, well, you'd have to go to probate to get this to, say, a son or a daughter?
It could. If there's one beneficiary listed and it happens to be like a deceased spouse, and then there's not a contingent beneficiary, then it's going to, usually it would default into the estate.
Okay. All right. We were talking to you before the show about your last program, which airs every Friday at 9 a.m. And interesting, and you thought there was a lot of interest in this as well, the whole idea of advanced directives.
Yes.
I want to talk about that because I don't think we've ever talked about that on this show when I've had Tim on or you before. Yeah. Advanced directives. Now, why is that a big deal?
It's a huge deal because it directs how you're going to be taken care of, how your medical decisions are going to be made when you can't talk for yourself. Okay,
maybe like you're unconscious or you're in a coma or whatever.
Or you've lost capacity because of advanced dementia.
Okay. Yeah. So you want to get it in place first. So the first thing that comes to mind is a do not resuscitation order. Right. That's the most common one. That's when you say, what's an advanced directive? Well, do not resuscitate, meaning I don't want to be brought back from extraordinary means if I'm there dying.
Right. So a DNR, or a do not resuscitate, is a physician's order, and it's going to show up if you're a resident of a facility. It's going to show up in those sets of orders. But for like you and me living in the community, we don't have a medical chart with a set of orders. So we can have things like healthcare powers of attorney, where we name someone else to make those medical decisions for us. You can name your spouse, you can name your children, you can name your sibling, you can name whomever you trust to make good decisions, that's going to be willing to be your advocate, that's going to be available, and willing, that's willing to step up.
Because you might be making a pretty tough call.
You may be making tough decisions.
But actually, it's not necessarily a tough call. Hopefully, whoever you appoint is going to do whatever you've told them you want.
And that's really the key right there, whatever you've told them. So you have to have those conversations to empower them with what it is you would want.
Right.
And sometimes you have to have some really difficult conversations. It's not just like, do I want to be on a breathing machine or do I want to have a tube feeding? It's under what circumstances would I be willing to live with that? If it was temporary, to treat me for a temporary condition that I could recover from versus my new way of living. Right? That might be a differentiator.
Sure.
You might be willing to be intubated for a few days if you had really bad pneumonia, but the doctors thought you were going to survive, as opposed to, I have ALS and I'm not going to be able to breathe on my own any longer, and this is my choice for respiration. Other choices like dialysis, where your kidneys no longer function. Maybe you have advanced dementia and whether or not to treat certain infections becomes a question. So there's lots of scenarios to think through. Under what circumstances would I what treatments? What am I willing to live with? What's my line in the sand kind of thing.
If you don't specify that type of thing, once you're incapacitated, doctors will just do everything they can to save you?
If you've still named a healthcare power of attorney, that agent will be the one that will talk for you.
And that's tougher then if you haven't told them what you want.
Yeah, then
they have to decide, oh boy,
what do I think they would have wanted based on what I know about that person. So conversations are really important.
Yep.
Okay, so you got a healthcare power of attorney. You also have an advanced care plan, which is a little bit like a living will, but it has a little more specificity about the degree of intervention and what kind of scenarios. Another document. Oh, sometimes if you're not going to an attorney to help you with these documents, a document like 5 wishes that you can find online. I think it's just as easy as Googling 5 wishes.
Huh, what is that?
It's a multi-page document, and it's produced by, I don't even know what organization produces it anymore, but it's as close to a universal advance directive as we have in our country, because it is accepted by many states. It tries to be statutorily compliant. Tennessee, it is compliant with Tennessee state law. So you name your agent, you do some questions, and you can name some of your situations and your circumstances under what you would, what kind of treatment you would want in certain situations. The state form, there is an advance directive you can download from tn.gov.
Yep.
It's certainly better than not having anything in place. But, you know, if you watch our show on Friday, you'll see a couple of physicians. One is an ER physician.
Right.
And he says, of course, their ethical duty is to do everything they can to help you survive first when you hit the door. And then they start looking for the advanced directives.
That was my next question. What happens if you're in the ER? They don't know. I mean, are you supposed to carry the directive with you everywhere you go? No. Right? I don't know. Is it something you put in your wallet? I mean, if not, I guess you can. But if you're being brought in, you've been triaged, and they need to save you right now, are they going to say, oh, let's go through his wallet and see what he's got? No, come on.
Right. They're going to triage you and stabilize you.
And then maybe.
And then they're going to look to see. And maybe by that time, there's family members that have shown up, and they start asking, who is the decision maker? It's really pretty important for family conflict avoidance to tell your family who the decision maker is. You know, it's not decision by committee. It is your named agent. Maybe that's your spouse, maybe it's not. If you are a blended family, it becomes increasingly important for harmony in your family.
Because you may have 2 siblings potentially that disagree. Yes,
absolutely.
End the life. No, keep them intubated.
That's right. That's right.
And then that ends up in court?
Well, it could through a conservatorship process, but most likely before it winds up in court, probably an ethics committee at the hospital or something to help you make that decision, to try to reach a consensus. Hopefully the physicians would step up and talk to you about what was going on with your parent or your loved one, and chances of survival.
Well, yeah, exactly, and that's so interesting to me. That's one of the most difficult things to deal with. But I always think about these people that have been on tubes for years with their family just hoping for a miracle.
Right.
Meanwhile, they're laying there year after year after year. And I'll tell you right now, I don't want that, okay? I'm not saying I don't believe in miracles.
That, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying I don't believe in miracles or whatever, but I'm sorry, you got to be a little realistic.
Right.
I don't want to be hooked up to a tube, brain dead on a hospital bed for 20 years because, you know, one of my family members thinks that a miracle is going to happen.
But I think that's the value system that has to be filtered or factored into this, is because some people believe that if there is an intervention to prolong life, that is the right thing to do. Obviously, people like you and me do not share that belief.
Well, that's to each his own. If you choose to be that way, that's your choice, and I'm not going to quibble with it, but you got to be pretty clear on that.
So you need an advance directive. At the very least, you need a healthcare power of attorney. That person needs to know they've been named the agent. They need to know where to find the document if you're not carrying it on your body all the time.
So where?
You know, and a copy is as effective as the original.
Okay.
So knowing where the original is good, but having copies, your primary care physician, your attorney's probably going to have a copy, your agent needs to have a copy. Maybe you keep a copy in the glove box with your car registration. But I think if you were, you know, it's probably one thing if you're healthy and you're just like what if there was an accident kind of thing, as opposed to someone that has chronic conditions or maybe is in a situation where they're on palliative or hospice type care, and you know, maybe the game has changed a little bit, the plans have changed.
Right.
Maybe you do carry that document a little bit closer to your person. Then keeping them updated, making sure that you update them on a regular basis, because as we go through life, our perspectives might change. You know, now we may be saying, do everything to keep me alive. If you have a chronic diagnosis of a brain tumor, maybe not. You know, so at least every decade.
Okay.
And even if your agent, your named agent, wouldn't change, make sure you can still find the documents. That everybody knows where they are. So at least every decade.
You can lose track of them. Yeah.
Oh, it's easy to. If there's been a death of a significant person in your life, spouse, children, parents, you know, people that could be named in those documents. When you divorce, it's a good idea not to have your ex-spouse still named as your healthcare power of attorney.
Okay.
When you get a major diagnosis, you know, something pretty significant, new heart disease, new lung disease, the cancers, Parkinson's, dementia, those things. If there's a decline in your functional condition, so even you might be advanced in age and you're starting to decline, you may start changing your mind about some of those interventions and might be moving towards comfort measures as opposed to curative measures. And then if you move states, domicile changes, making sure that your document is statutorily compliant, because like I said, every state's got their own rules and regs.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, our final segment, 737-7587 is the number if you want to jump in for a question. When we come back too, I just wanted to clarify when power of attorney ends. Does it end when someone dies? Don't answer. We'll get into that and more right after this. Stay with us.